Dit is vir my vreeslik lekker om vanoggend met Leanne Kiezer te gesels. Nou sy is betrokke en sy is van Danone Suid-Afrika. Leanne, welcome to GROOTplaas.
Thank you so much, Mia. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
How are you on this lovely morning?
I am great. I actually join you from KZN this morning. I'm attending the Nutrition Congress in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, and it's just beautiful, of course, in KZN. No snow, which is good news.
Leanne, let's start with, when we talk about the topic of sustainability, I think, when the relationship comes between private and, the public sector, why is the sustainable impact, why should it be important for corporates specifically?
Look, it's absolutely important. And I think what we see is a lot of momentum in corporates and in the private sector, finally realizing the role and responsibility that they have to play in ensuring sustainable impact in the countries that they operate. Now, this is mainly for two reasons. We're really grateful for this revolution and realization, but where is it coming from? So, first of all, ultimately, these sort of sustainability goals get set by the UN sustainability goals, right? So it's a global initiative. It's a global KPI that gets set. And although those goals get specified and set, it's actually responsible in the country that you're in. You have to set country-centric strategies to be able to achieve those goals. So we know what the end point is. We know what we're trying to achieve, but the method of how to get there has to actually be developed in your country. And so there is a huge amount of pressure on organizations in the countries that they operate to work with their multi-sector, multi-stakeholder environment to talk about the nuances, the barriers, the challenges of that individual country, and then be able to develop the correct strategy to achieve the goal and reach it. So I would like to mention that I think there is a huge nudge, a huge increase in pressure from our global stakeholders, from our local stakeholders, even from consumers, to make sure that we are doing right as part of our business goals. But the other element of this, which is really exciting, is that I think mature organizations are realizing that in order to build their own business sustainability within a particular country, they need to make sure that the country, the community, the people are able to reinvest back into the business. And so smart businesses, considering sustainability, will realize that in order to keep themselves operating and running, we need economically active, thriving, healthy South Africans to ultimately reinvest back into our business. And so as part of our business goals, we should be investing in the social upliftment of the community around us, of South Africans, so that their infrastructure is working well. Because when consumers and the community are thriving and working well, ultimately, this creates an economy to serve back into your business, and collectively, we can be sustainable into the future.
So what I'm thinking is, we're talking about a collaboration. This is like almost the ultimate collaboration. What does this collaboration look like for the agricultural sector? If we can maybe just paint a bigger picture, what should it look like?
Well, look, I mean, from Danone Southern Africa's perspective, obviously we're a dairy business. We work extensively with farmers in South Africa, dairy farmers in particular. Milk supply is a huge part of our business operations and what we do and what we deliver. And so what does that mean for us? I mean, so basically the impact then in particular of environmental sustainability becomes a huge, huge topic within this sector. And, we know that there is growing pressure again from our regulators and stakeholders to act, to make sure that, well, actually daily, we're seeing more and more roadmaps, more and more policies, more and more initiatives being published by the policy sector, nudging the different members across the dairy value chain to make sure that they're working together towards the common goal of protecting nature and protecting people. Now, for Danone, from our perspective, again, I guess we're more mature mature in this topic because we have something called the Danone Impact Journey, which is guiding our daily operations and business goals and making sure that as part of the work we're doing to produce dairy products, we're also doing right to protect nature. We know that in order, again, to sustain our business and milk supply in South Africa, to be able to provide these healthy foods to people, we need a healthy planet to be able to, foster healthy developing cows, to be able to produce nutritious milk. And so again, it's these topics are not in isolation. Serving nature, serving agriculture, and making sure we are, adopting regenerative practices to sustain the sustainable supply of milk, ultimately, again, serves our business and our ability to be able to provide milk to the people of South Africa.
I'm quite interested in this. How exactly is the yogurt industry or the dairy industry using regenerative agriculture to make this positive impact? I mean, how does that look practically?
Yeah, so it's really exciting and it is multi-stakeholder work, but we have some really good examples of this. So 100% of the farmers that we work with as Danone have registered or are already enrolled into a regenerative agriculture program. And so what that means is that we actually incentivize our farmers to adopt regen programs in their facilities and on their farms. And we incentivize them by basically paying a small premium per ton of milk that they give us, provided that they have achieved certain targets. So the partnership is quite extensive. We work, of course, with our farmers. We also work with a facility called Trace and Save. And Trace and Save is really an expert in being able to audit a farmer's operations, a farmer's carbon outputs, methane production, and so on. And they're able to measure at all the different touch points of methane production how a farm is performing. And then based on that, we get certain scores on the regenerative practices that farm has adopted. And based on the scores, we incentivize the farmer to say, okay, the higher your score is, the bigger the premium that we will pay for your milk. And in the long term, this is an investment for Danone and for the farmer, because we know then that the farms who are adopting those regenerative practices are going to have a much longer, more stable sustainability in the long term. They will be more resilient to climate change. They will be, the cows will be stronger and more resilient to the environmental factors around them. So it does serve us in the long term too. And at the same time, we're incentivizing with hard finances, to really motivate the farmers to be able to adopt these practices.
Which is so important, right? It's so important. Yeah. I think we can't talk about sustainability without talking about biodiversity. And, I think the theme of biodiversity, we know it's so important, but why should it be like priority for corporate South Africa to get involved and help the loss of biodiversity? Why should that be a priority?
Well, it absolutely has to be because, again, all of these things are interconnected. So, again, I've referenced the snow in KZN earlier last week, and just what a, extreme climate, short-term disaster that was. A life was lost. And so if we do not protect against the harming and threats to biodiversity, we're seeing an increase in the concept of global warming, and we will see an increase in these extreme sort of climate happenings and events. And this is disruptive to everybody, but especially to South Africa, where, when we do experience the impact of something extreme, climate change, snow, floods, whatever they could be, our infrastructures are battling so that it actually is much more difficult, much longer, harder road to be able to bounce back and recover from that kind of disruption. And so this applies to our business too. So we have a role to play in protecting biodiversity. Why? Because it is a contributing factor to global warming, natural disasters, huge climate change, and we need to try and prevent prevent this from occurring, because in the long term, this causes complete business and country disruption. So we do have a role to play in that. Again, it just stems back to the fact that if we want to continue serving healthy foods to people, we need infrastructure to be able to do that. And protecting infrastructure requires that we protect against climate change and global warming. And one of the ways to do that is to protect biodiversity. So, you know, it is, I understand, sometimes a difficult sell because there's a lot of elements to understand. But once you've understood it, you understand the role you have to play to protect biodiversity, to protect climate, and then in the long term, protect your business operations as well.
Leanne, when we look at this very important collaboration and you look at the private sector and the public sector, if we can bring it back to farming, the agricultural sector in South Africa, who should make the first move when it comes to this collaboration, this taking hands, this being part of each other's story? Where should that collab begin?
You know, it's
ideally.
Look, we definitely, as I say, receive the nudge from our policymakers and regulators, right? Those national, municipal and regulatory authorities. So the government ultimately provides the nudge. And so, again, once we've received these UN Sustainable Development Goals, we are responsible at a country level to be able to develop the roadmaps to achieve those goals. And usually this kind of thing gets initiated by the government, and this is great news. In other cases, we also can see that in the agricultural sector, you know, government on their own may not necessarily know all the answers. I mean, nor do any of the stakeholders in the value chain know exactly how we'll achieve the goals. And so this is why the moment of inter-stakeholder collaboration is so important, that we host meetings of these people. Our regulators understand the goals. Our scientists understand the consequences. The food industry understands the value chain. You know, the NGOs can also discuss the consequences, and together academics can build research and innovation and develop ideas. And so together, collectively, this is how we build roadmaps and build solutions from an intersectoral place, because everybody has a different element to bring together. I think who should initiate it? In part, I believe this comes from our regulators and authorities. But I also think that as we are increasing the responsibility of the private sector and responsibility of corporates in South Africa to do good as part of their business goals, I'm seeing more and more that this is being initiated, at least these types of discussions. Danone ourselves, we're hosting an impact summit next week, Tuesday, on the 8th of October, where we actually invite a multidisciplinary group of stakeholders into a room to talk about topics of social sustainable impact in South Africa that's focusing on how do we sustainably serve the health of people, how do we sustainably protect and regenerate nature, and how do we sustainably uplift society so that they can achieve their social goals. And in that forum, we really hope to unpack and discuss all these elements that, you know, we all have our different pieces of information that contribute to the whole. And ultimately, it's through that collaboration and sharing of information that the real roadmaps can be set.
Leanne, thank you so much for sharing with us this morning. And we really appreciate it. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Dankie dat jy ingeskakel het. Ek en jy sien mekaar môreoggend weer. Mag dit mooi wees daar waar jy is en ja, ek hoop dit is 'n mooi dag sommer. Totsiens.